I'm sitting in my car right now in a dimly lit CVS parking lot, about 3 miles away from the house I share with my wife, Sarah, F28. The engine is off. The rain is drumming against the roof like 1,000 tiny hammers, and I'm staring at a manila folder in my passenger seat like it's a live grenade. My hands are shaking so hard I can barely type this. I feel like my entire life, the last 32 years of it, has been a carefully constructed lie. Let's back up. I need to get this out before I lose my mind. I grew up as the reliable son. That's the word my mother Eleanor always used. Alex is our rock, she'd say at Thanksgiving, usually while patting my hand and looking over at my younger brother Julian, M29. Julian was the dreamer, the artist, the golden child. While I was working 2 jobs in college to keep my debt low, Julian was finding himself in Europe on my parents' dime. When I got my first corporate job and started saving for a modest down payment on a house, Julian was getting a brand new Lexus because he needed to look the part for his startup, a startup that, predictably, folded within 6 months. My father, David, was a quiet man. He ran what I thought was a small-scale construction and property management company. We lived comfortably, sure, but we weren't rich, or so I was told. Dad died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack. It shattered me. He was the only person in that house who actually saw me. After the funeral, the reading of the will was strange. Eleanor and Julian were huddled with the family lawyer, a guy named Miller who has been Uncle Miller to us kids forever. They told me that because of the market downturn and some bad investments Dad made toward the end, there wasn't much left. Eleanor got the house, and Julian and I were left with a modest trust of $50,000 each. I remember feeling guilty for even thinking about money while my dad was gone. I told Eleanor, "Mom, it's fine. I just want you to be taken care of." She cried, hugged me, and told me I was such a good, selfless boy. Meanwhile, Julian was complaining that $50,000 wouldn't even cover his rebranding costs for his next project. For 2 years, I've been the reliable one. I've mowed Eleanor's lawn. I've fixed her leaky faucets. I've listened to her moan about how tight her budget is, all while I watched Julian suddenly start living a lifestyle that didn't match a $50,000 inheritance. New clothes, a penthouse rental in the city, high-end watches. When I asked Eleanor about it, she'd wave a hand and say, "Oh, Julian is just finally seeing success with his consulting, Alex. Why can't you be happy for your brother? Your jealousy is so unbecoming." It made me feel like the villain. It made me feel small. Even my wife, Sarah, started siding with them. This is the part that hurts the most. Sarah and I have been married for 4 years. Lately, she's been spending a lot of time with Eleanor. Girls' days, she calls them. But Sarah's been acting distant. Every time I bring up my suspicions about Julian's money, she shuts me down. "Alex, stop being so paranoid," she'd say. "Your mother loves you. Why would she lie?" Well, today I found out why. Eleanor asked me to come over this afternoon to help her clear out some junk from the attic. She said she wanted to downsize some of Dad's old office files. She was downstairs making tea when I found it. It was a locked, fireproof floor safe tucked behind a stack of old National Geographics and my 1998 Little League trophies. Now, here's the thing about being the reliable son. Dad trusted me with everything. I remembered the code. It was my birthday, not Julian's, not the anniversary, mine. Inside weren't just files. It was a secondary ledger and a second will. My father wasn't a small-scale contractor. He owned a real estate holding company that held title to over a dozen commercial properties across the state. The market downturn was a lie. The business was worth upwards of $15 million. But that's not the betrayal. I found a codicil, a legal amendment, dated 3 months before my father died. It wasn't the one Miller read to us. The real will left the majority of the income-producing properties to me, with a managed stipend for Eleanor and a very small, restricted trust for Julian. Because, as my father wrote in his own hand, Julian lacks the discipline to manage a legacy, and I fear he will be led astray by his mother's indulgences. Then, I found the correspondence. There were letters read it, physical, printed emails between Eleanor and Miller. They knew. They forged a different version of the will. They leveraged my reliability and my grief to keep me quiet while they liquidated 2 of the smaller properties to fund Julian's consulting lifestyle. And then, I found a note in Sarah's handwriting. It was tucked into an envelope addressed to Eleanor. It said, "He's starting to ask questions about the Lexus. I told him he was being paranoid again, but we need to move faster on the Brewster property sale. If Alex finds out the truth before the papers are signed, he'll never forgive me. Please tell me the bonus you promised is still coming through. We need that kitchen remodel." My wife, my rock. She wasn't just gaslighting me to keep the peace. She was being paid to keep me in the dark. My mother was bribing my wife with my own stolen inheritance to keep me playing the role of the good, reliable son while they picked my father's carcass clean. I didn't scream. I didn't make a sound. I took the folder. I took the ledgers. I took Sarah's note. I walked down those stairs, and Eleanor was standing there with 2 mugs of chamomile tea, smiling that sweet, fake narcissist smile. "All done, honey?" she asked. I just looked at her. I think my face must have been a mask of death because her smile faltered. I didn't say a word. I just walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove. Sarah has called me 15 times. She just texted, "Where are you? Dinner is getting cold. Eleanor said you left looking ghostly. Are you okay, baby?" Baby. I'm sitting here, looking at the rain, and I realize I have no one. My mother is a thief. My brother is a parasite. My wife is a mercenary. But they forgot one thing. Dad made the code to that safe my birthday for a reason. He knew. He knew they would try this. And he left me the paper trail to destroy them all. I'm not going home tonight. I'm going to a hotel. And tomorrow morning, I'm calling the biggest, meanest estate litigator in the city. Not Miller. Someone who eats people like Miller for breakfast. My hands have stopped shaking. Now, they're just cold. I don't know what happens next. I don't know how I look at Sarah again without seeing a stranger. But I do know this. The reliable son is finished. I'll update when I can, if I don't go catatonic first. Time passed since last post. 48 hours. I haven't slept. Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I see that note in Sarah's handwriting. "The bonus you promised." Those 5 words are a rhythmic thumping in my skull, timed perfectly with my heartbeat. I spent the first 24 hours in a Red Roof Inn on the outskirts of town. I didn't want to go to a Marriott or a Hilton where they might track the credit card. I paid cash. I sat on a bed that smelled like stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, spreading my father's real ledgers across the polyester floral bedspread. I'm a forensic accountant by trade. Did I mention that? My mother always called it my boring little hobby job. But being boring means I know how to follow a paper trail that most people would miss. I spent all night cross-referencing the official estate filings Uncle Miller handled with the private logs my father kept in that safe. The scale of the theft it's breathtaking. It's not just a few properties. They've been funneling money through a shell company called J Legacy Holdings. J for Julian, of course. They've siphoned off nearly $2.2 million in liquid assets and rental income in just 24 months. And Sarah, God, Sarah. I found a digital trail on our shared cloud drive that I never bothered to look at before. She has a separate savings account at a bank I don't use. Yesterday morning, I didn't call Miller. I called a firm downtown that specializes in aggressive estate litigation and white-collar fraud. The lead partner is a woman named Diane. She's 60, wears power suits that probably cost more than Julian's Lexus, and has eyes like a hawk. I walked into her office, dropped the manila folder on her desk, and said, "My family stole my father's legacy. My wife helped them. I want it back. All of it. And I want them to hurt while I take it." Diane looked through the papers for 10 minutes in total silence. Then she looked up, took off her glasses, and said, "Mr. Sterling, this isn't just a civil dispute. This is forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand larceny. If these signatures on the second will are as forged as they look, your mother and brother aren't just looking at a lawsuit. They're looking at a jumpsuit." That should have made me feel better. It just made me feel cold. I went home last night. I had to. Diane told me to act normal for 48 hours while her team filed the emergency injunctions to freeze the estate accounts. Walking into that house was the hardest thing I've ever done. It felt like walking into a crime scene where the body was still warm. Sarah was in the kitchen. She was wearing that oversized sweater I bought her for Christmas, the one she said made her feel safe. She was humming. "Alex!" she cried, running over to hug me. I felt her arms wrap around my waist, and I had to physically fight the urge to gag. She smelled like the vanilla perfume I used to love. Now it just smelled like decay. "Where have you been? I was worried sick. I called the hospitals. I called Julian." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the slight twitch in her eye, the way she didn't quite meet my gaze. "I just needed to drive, Sarah," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from a mile away. "I went to the old cabin site, just thinking about Dad." "Oh, honey," she said, stroking my arm. "You've been so stressed lately. Your mother is worried too. She wants us to come over for dinner tomorrow night. She said she has a surprise for us. Something about the Brewster property finally closing?" The Brewster property. The one from the note. The bonus. "A surprise, huh?" I said. I walked past her to the fridge and poured a glass of water just so I wouldn't have to touch her. "That sounds lovely. I can't wait to see what Mom has in store for us." She smiled. It was the most beautiful, predatory smile I've ever seen. "She just wants you to be happy, Alex. She knows how hard you work. She wants us to have the life we deserve." The life we deserve. I spent the rest of the night on the couch. I told her I had a migraine. She tried to rub my shoulders, and I told her, firmly, to please just leave me alone. I watched her walk up the stairs, her phone already in her hand, likely texting Eleanor that the reliable son was back in the pen. But here's what they don't know. While Sarah was sleeping, I was in the guest room with my laptop. I've already granted Diane's firm access to all my father's digital backups. I've also started cleaning my personal accounts. And then, at 2 a.m., I got a text from Julian. "Hey bro, heard you went AWOL for a minute. Glad you're back. Mom is hyped for dinner tomorrow. Seriously, don't be a buzzkill. Big things are happening for the fam. Also, can I borrow $2,000 for the deposit on the new boat? I'm a little illiquid until the Brewster check clears. I'll pay you back double, I swear." The audacity, the sheer unadulterated gall of this man-child. He's asking to borrow $2,000 from the brother he's currently robbing of millions. I replied, "No problem, Jules. We'll talk about the money at dinner. I have a surprise of my own to share." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. "Tomorrow is the dinner. My mother, the narcissist queen, Julian, the golden parasite, and Sarah, the traitor in my bed. They think they're gathering to celebrate another successful heist. They think I'm coming to the table to be patted on the head and handed a bonus for being a good little boy. They have no idea that the process servers are already briefed. They have no idea that the surprise I'm bringing to dinner is a mountain of legal dynamite and a one-way ticket to a deposition." I'm sitting in the guest room now. The sun is coming up. I can hear Sarah stirring in our bedroom. I can hear the shower starting. She's probably thinking about that new kitchen. I'm thinking about the look on her face when she realizes she's not getting a remodel. She's getting a divorce. I'm scared, Reddit. I'm losing my whole world. But for the first time in 2 years, I don't feel like a rock. I feel like a landslide. I'll update after the dinner, if the police let me. Time passed since last update, 3 weeks. I'm sorry it's taken me this long to post. My life has been a blur of depositions, police statements, and moving boxes. I'm currently staying in a small apartment downtown, a place Sarah doesn't know about. I changed my number. I changed my locks. I'm changing my entire existence. But I promised you the truth. So, let's talk about that dinner. It was 3 weeks ago. It was a Thursday. It was raining, one of those cold, miserable October drizzles that makes everything look gray. I drove to my mother's house in total silence. Sarah was in the passenger seat, scrolling through a home renovation Pinterest board. She actually had the nerve to show me a picture of a marble island. "What do you think of this for the kitchen, Alex?" she asked, her voice light and airy. "It's a bit pricey, but Eleanor says we should treat ourselves after all the help we've given her." I looked at her, and for a second, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I just nodded and said, "It's a very expensive choice, Sarah." We pulled into Eleanor's driveway. Julian's new Lexus was already there, gleaming under the porch lights like a trophy of his theft. We walked inside. The house smelled like rosemary chicken and expensive wine. Eleanor was dressed in a silk blouse, her hair perfectly coiffed, looking every bit the grieving, dignified widow. Julian was leaning against the kitchen counter, swirling a glass of Dad's vintage scotch, the stuff Dad was saving for my 40th birthday. "Alex, my favorite son!" Eleanor chirped, coming over to kiss my cheek. I felt my skin crawl. "Hey, big brother," Julian said, smirking. "Ready for the big surprise?" We sat down at the mahogany dining table. The atmosphere was thick with fake cheer. They were all talking about the Brewster property closing. Apparently, the sale was set for the following Monday. Eleanor cleared her throat and set down her fork. "Alex, dear, I know these last 2 years have been hard on all of us, and you've been so reliable, so helpful. I wanted to show my appreciation." She slid a thick, creamy envelope across the table. "Go on," she whispered. "Open it." I opened it. It was a check for $25,000, made out to me and Sarah. "It's a little thank you for all the yard work and the repairs," Eleanor said. "And there's plenty more where that came from once the Brewster deal is finalized. We're a family after all. We take care of our own." Sarah gasped. "Oh, Eleanor, this is so generous." She grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed it. Her palm was sweaty. I looked at the check. Then I looked at Julian, who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Then I looked at my mother. "Mom," I said, my voice deathly quiet. "Where did this money come from?" Eleanor's smile faltered just a fraction. "From the estate, darling. I told you, Dad left a little extra in a rainy day fund." "The rainy day fund?" I asked. I reached into my briefcase, which I'd kept by my chair. "Is that what you call the $2.2 million you funneled into Julian's shell company? Or is it the income from the 3 commercial plazas you hid from the probate court?" You could have heard a pin drop. The color drained out of Eleanor's face so fast it was like someone had pulled a plug. Julian's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "Alex, what on earth are you talking about?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. You're having one of your episodes. Put that away." "Episodes?" I laughed. It was a dark, jagged sound. "I'm not the one having an episode, Sarah. I'm the one with the floor safe combination. I'm the one who found the real will. The one Dad signed 3 months before he died. The one Uncle Miller helped you hide." I pulled out the manila folder and slammed it onto the table, right on top of the rosemary chicken. "I found your note, Sarah," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "The one about the bonus for keeping me in the dark. The one about the kitchen remodel." Sarah's face went from confusion to pure, unadulterated terror. She looked at Eleanor. Eleanor looked at the folder like it was a snake. That's a forgery," Julian shouted, slamming his glass down. "You're just jealous, Alex. You've always been jealous of me. Dad loved me more. He wanted me to have the business." "Dad thought you were a liability, Julian," I said, my voice rising. "He wrote it in his own hand. He left the properties to me because he knew you'd snort the profits or lose them in a failed startup within a year." "You shut your mouth!" Eleanor screamed. She stood up, her face twisted into a mask of pure narcissistic rage. "I am your mother. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Your father was old and confused. He didn't know what he was doing. I've spent my life catering to you, and this is how you repay me? By spying? By stealing files? Repay you?" I stood up too. My chair screeched against the hardwood. "You stole my inheritance. You stole my father's legacy, and you bought my wife." Sarah started sobbing. "Alex, please. It wasn't like that. Eleanor said the money was coming to you anyway. She just wanted to wait until you were ready. I just wanted us to be happy." "With stolen money, Sarah? You were fine with me being gaslit for 2 years as long as you got your marble island." I shook my head. "I already filed for divorce this morning. The papers are in the briefcase." The room exploded. Eleanor started throwing things. Her wine glass shattered against the wall. Julian lunged at me, trying to grab the folder, and I pushed him back so hard he tripped over his own expensive loafers and crashed into the sideboard. "You're dead to me!" Eleanor shrieked. "You hear me? You'll never see a dime. I'll burn it all to the ground before I let you take it." "Actually," I said, checking my watch, "the burning part is going to be a little difficult for you." There was a heavy knock at the front door. Not a polite knock. A "we're not leaving" knock. "That'll be the process servers," I said, and the 2 detectives from the white-collar crime unit Diane called. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Eleanor froze. Julian scrambled to his feet, looking toward the back door. "Don't bother, Jules," I said. "They're at the back too." I walked to the front door and opened it. 2 men in suits and a uniformed officer were standing there in the rain. I pointed toward the dining room. "The documents are on the table," I told them. The individuals involved are in the dining room. The next hour was a blur of chaos. Eleanor was screaming about her rights and disrespectful children as she was served with a temporary restraining order and a freeze on all her accounts. Julian was being questioned in the kitchen, his bravado completely gone. He was literally shaking and crying, blaming everything on Mom. And Sarah was on her knees in the hallway, clutching my coat, begging me not to do this. "Alex, please, we can fix this. I'll give the money back. I'll do anything." I looked down at her. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt empty. "You already did anything, Sarah." That was the problem. I pulled my coat away from her and walked out into the rain. I didn't look back. I could hear Eleanor screaming my name from the porch, a high, thin sound like a wounded animal. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, it's been a legal bloodbath. Diane, my lawyer, is a shark. She's already found evidence that Uncle Miller didn't just help with the will, he helped them launder the rental income through Julian's consulting firm. Miller is facing disbarment and criminal charges. Eleanor has been calling me from a burner phone, alternating between sobbing apologies and telling me she hopes I rot in hell. Julian is currently under investigation for tax evasion on top of the fraud. And Sarah, she's moved back in with her parents. She's been sending me memory photos every day, photos of our wedding, photos of our first dog. I blocked her yesterday. I'm exhausted, Reddit. My bank account is frozen along with the rest of the estate while the court sorts through the mess, so I'm living off my savings in a studio apartment. But for the first time in years, I can breathe. The golden child is facing a prison sentence. The narcissist queen is losing her palace, and the reliable son is finally free. I'll post a final update when the court cases are settled. It might be a while. Time passed since last update, 18 months. I'm sitting on the deck of a small, quiet cabin in the mountains. It's not the Brewster property, and it's not a mansion. It's a place my father bought years ago that even my mother didn't know about. A small parcel of land he'd kept in a separate trust for emergencies. I think he knew this day would come. He knew I'd need a place to hide while the world burned. The last year and a half has been a gauntlet of depositions, forensic audits, and the kind of family warfare that leaves scars you can't see. But today, the final papers were signed. The ink is dry. It's over. Let's talk about the fallout. The legal case against my mother and Julian was a slam dunk thanks to Uncle Miller. It turns out Uncle Miller wasn't very loyal once the district attorney started talking about racketeering and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. To save his own skin and keep his law license, which he lost anyway, Miller flipped on Eleanor faster than a pancake. He handed over 3 years of emails. Emails where my mother explicitly coached him on how to alter the codicil. Emails where Julian joked about how easy it was to play me because I was too busy being a martyr to notice they were robbing me blind. In court, Eleanor tried to play the confused widow card one last time. She wore a modest gray dress and kept dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. But when the judge saw the ledger, the one she thought she'd burned but I had saved, the confused widow act evaporated. The judge didn't hold back. He called her actions a calculated predatory betrayal of the most sacred familial trust. The result, Eleanor was ordered to pay back every cent she siphoned, plus interest and legal fees. Because she'd already spent so much of it, the court ordered the sale of her palace, the family home. She's currently living in a 2-bedroom apartment, surviving on a strictly monitored Social Security check. No more silk blouses. No more rosemary chicken. Julian didn't handle the illiquidity well. When the accounts were frozen, he tried to borrow money from some very shady people to maintain his lifestyle. Between the civil judgment and a separate charge for tax evasion, he served 6 months in a minimum security facility. He's out now, working a retail job he hates, still texting me from different numbers every month, begging for a loan to get back on his feet. I haven't replied once. And then there's Sarah. The divorce was finalized 8 months ago. She didn't get the bonus. She didn't get the kitchen remodel. She didn't even get half of our shared assets. My lawyer proved that she had been receiving gifts from the estate that were actually diverted inheritance, which the court counted against her settlement. I saw her one last time, at the lawyer's office to sign the final papers. She looked different, tired. The glow was gone. She tried to talk to me in the hallway. "Alex," she whispered, "do you think, after some time, We could just talk? Not about the money, just about us. I miss our life. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel that stabbing pain in my chest. I just felt a profound sense of pity. Sarah, I said, our life was a performance. You were a paid actress, and I was the only one who didn't know the script. There is no us to go back to. I was scared, she snapped, her old self peeking through. Eleanor said you'd leave me if we didn't have the money to keep up. She said she was doing it for our future. No, I told her. She did it for her control, and you did it for a marble island. Enjoy the view from the kitchen you don't have. I walked away, and I haven't looked at a photo of her since. So, where am I now? After the properties were sold or restructured, I ended up with a significant portion of the estate. It's more money than I'll ever need, but I didn't keep it all. I set up a foundation in my father's name. It provides grants for trade school students, kids who, like my dad, want to build things with their hands but don't have the startup capital to begin. It's what he would have wanted. It's the legacy Julian would have squandered. I'm still the reliable one, but I'm reliable for myself now. I spent this morning hiking up the trail behind this cabin. The air was crisp, and the world felt quiet. No screaming mothers, no parasitic brothers, no lying wives. Just the sound of the wind in the pines, and the realization that I am 34 years old and my life is finally starting. I found a letter from my dad in a safety deposit box that even Miller didn't know about. It was dated just a week before he passed. It said, "Alex, if you're reading this, it means the storm has broken. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from them while I was here. Your mother has a hunger that can't be filled, and Julian has a hollow where his heart should be. But you have the strength to survive them. Don't let their greed turn you cold. Build something of your own. Love, Dad." I'm building it, Dad. Piece by piece. I think I'm going to stay in the mountains for a while. I'm going to learn how to fish. I'm going to read all those books I was too busy to read while I was mowing Eleanor's lawn. I'm going to find out who Alex Sterling is when he's not being a rock for people who only want to grind him into dust. To everyone on Reddit who sent me messages of support over the last year, thank you. You kept me sane when I thought I was losing my mind. You reminded me that being reliable isn't a weakness, as long as you're reliable to the right people. This is my final update. The saga is over. The reliable sun is signing off. I think I'll go watch the sunset now.